Hello and welcome to Craftcast, the Freemasons podcast. As always, I have here with me
James
and
Shaun.
Who both sound very aggressively well.
Sorry.
very well indeed.
And confirm I am well.
Good. Great. Well, it's unusual for you to be well. You've always got a sniffle.
You are always sick, actually.
It's like you wait for us to arrive.
I have a 3-year-old.
And?
I will say no more than that. Let me extend that. I have a 3-year-old at nursery. It's basically a petri dish of disease.
Well, and you keep spreading it around the office as well, don't you?
Yes.
Well, yes, I have. Several members of my team have been poorly but you know, they travel in on trains. They're exposed to germs in other fashions.
So it's just a coincidence.
And they're exposed
they
to
all got ill.
It's this time of year where the spread of germs is absolutely rife. And by the way,
coincidence.
You do get some people who just sneeze and not put their hand over their mouth. And I'm not one of those people.
That is quite bad.
You say it.
You're quite diligent with the hand sanitizer. We went up to Shaun's office earlier, and the first thing I noticed on your desk was a sort of enormous packet of antibacterial wipes.
Can I just say, your comment on me being quite diligent is the understatement of the year. I am an enormous,
obsessive,
literally, germaphobe. I mean, I genuinely am. It's a thing.
You didn't go up to the office when we had our lunch break earlier, but honestly, like a family-sized multi-pack of antibacterial.
So let me clarify. These are Clinell. If you go to hospital,
this is what they have.
They have the green version of this. It's used to clean surgical devices.
So you like quite OCD with this?
Oh, it's a genuine thing. I thought you guys knew this about me.
I've noticed it before.
You will never see me opening a handle.
No, I'm like that as
well. I will
well.
Always use like
a sleeve or something. Yeah, I'm the same.
I have a real thing with
something I've never quite managed to work out why, like taps. It just doesn't make sense unless they're sensorless.
Well, what really frustrates me, a non-sensorless tap in a public toilet.
Yes, that doesn't make sense.
Is the bane of this is very odd. Is the bane of my life.
This isn't what we were going to be talking about today.
You know what? In a lot of Masonic halls, twisty taps.
Yeah, that's true.
I look at it with great trepidation and fear.
You like the automated tap?
Yeah. Apart from in my own home.
So this is us. This is what we do on Craftcast, the big questions of the day.
Which taps do you like?
Yeah.
I do have actually quite a strong opinion on those automated taps, because I don't know if you've ever noticed when you're in an airport or a train station, they never give you enough water. You get like a little squirt of water, and then you're just constantly having to like wave your hand underneath it to get more.
Do you use the bathroom on a train?
If I need to, yeah, of course.
Moving on.
No, he wears diapers. I mean, what?
I would rather get off the train.
Anyway, bringing it back.
Can we? I keep trying to change the subject. You two are intent on discussing
taps.
Taps in public restrooms.
We've got a fencer. We've got taps. You know.
Right. Okay. Back to today.
Yes.
All important. Series exclusive, because we have one episode for this every series.
Yep.
Okay, so this is our one episode this series. Making the most of it. Word explainer episode. Back by popular demand.
Yes.
We are back with a bang and 4 words.
Yes.
And 4 words. Well, we'll see.
We'll see. Let's see how much time
how many
we have.
words.
Yes, we do have a selection of words which are all Masonic terminology that we're going to try and do our very best to explain to our listeners.
I will ask Shaun. I will ask you first. Grand Lodge.
Ooh. Okay.
Drum roll.
Drum roll.
Insert jingle.
Insert jingle. Grand Lodge. Okay, so you would have heard us, I think in season 1, was it? We talked about lodges.
Yes, and I think we made a
passing
brief
reference.
Well, I believe we've previously discussed provincial in a previous one of these episodes. Provincial and district Grand Masters.
Yes,
you're right.
Metropolitan Grand Masters.
Yes, you're right.
We have discussed that, but we haven't discussed provincial Grand Lodge as a wider thing, but mainly Grand Lodge.
Grand Lodge.
Right. So, if you think of it, sort of different levels and different layers within Freemasonry. So, at its very sort of truest form, within Freemasonry, you will have a lodge. So we are all members of a lodge, Lodge 10,000.
Which is the thing that you join
Which
when
is the
you
thing that you join when you're initiated. You
Yeah.
are initiated into a lodge. And as we discussed in season 1, there is a worshipful master of that lodge, and he is responsible for the running of that particular lodge, obviously with assistance of others. Then That's your lodge. That's the thing that every Freemason will be a member of. Then above that, you will have a province or a district or a group of lodges in some cases within UGLE. And that is what we call a province or district, as I say, and they will then be controlled and administered by the provincial metropolitan district Grand Master who looks after that and has responsibility for that group of lodges.
Yeah, they govern that area, basically.
Exactly. Right? Then we go another level above that to what we call a Grand Lodge. And a Grand Lodge invariably will be national, not always, particularly thinking about our brothers across the pond, where they have that.
Well, Germany, for example, has 5, Germany, I believe.
There are 5, but for the purposes of the United Grand Lodge of England, our Grand Lodge is national, and
across England and Wales.
Across England, Wales, the Isle of Man, the Channel Islands, but also a number of districts overseas.
Indeed, yeah.
As we are well represented by today, and Grand Lodge is essentially responsible for the governance of English Freemasonry, the English Constitution, and it's the United Grand Lodge of England through which that is for us, and obviously also, though, as we said, in other parts of the world, for example in the United States, each state invariably will have its own Grand Lodge. And again, though, it will follow that same, where then they have different parts within that
different
Grand
areas
Lodge.
And then different specific lodges within
exactly.
it.
But within each of those, they will at the sort of other end of it, you do have the individual lodges,
private lodges, as you sometimes hear them called.
Exactly. And the Grand Master of the United Grand Lodge of England, as we know, is His Royal Highness the Duke of Kent, and each individual foreign Grand Lodge or overseas Grand Lodge will have its own Grand Master that will be responsible for the governance of Freemasonry within that area in its entirety. Yeah. So it's a big deal.
3 layers, basically.
Exactly. There's 3 layers to the system, and we are, in this room, all members of Grand Lodge, and there's a little intricacy there, isn't there, within English Freemasonry, where technically you become a member of Grand Lodge
as soon as you're initiated.
No. As soon as you become a warden of your lodge, you officially become a member of Grand Lodge.
There you go. Live and learn.
So obviously I'm now senior warden, but as junior warden, I was informed that actually now I am a member of Grand Lodge, which means that I have the right to vote in Grand Lodge.
Right. Yes. Well, and which is obviously where it comes from, that originally you were only, for a while ago, you could only attend Grand Lodge if you were a warden or above.
Yes.
And you needed some kind of dispensation to be, or invitation to be going as a Master Mason. But nowadays, obviously, that's changed a little. But
it has changed, although the rule about voting still applies.
Still applies.
Master Masons who are not wardens or above cannot vote.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's probably anything you guys would like to add to that?
No, I think you've covered that perfectly, but I would expect nothing less from you.
Very generous of you.
Although I did just say no. I will add one thing, actually.
Almost perfect, Shaun.
We referenced this in the first series when we did it. There is a distinction between a lodge or a Grand Lodge and the building that it meets in.
Oh, yes, very true.
Yeah,
this building that we're in now is called Freemasons Hall.
Not Grand Lodge.
It is not called Grand Lodge. It is just happens to be the building where Grand Lodge
is
administered from.
And meets.
Yes.
And meets.
Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Of course, colloquially, people will call it Grand Lodge, but it's actually called Freemasons Hall.
And the key point is that Grand Lodge can meet elsewhere, as we saw in Monmouthshire.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and actually probably a good example, I know you'll have a go at me for mentioning Gibraltar again.
You're from Gibraltar?
But I know. But it is actually, we have different constitution, not just English constitution in Gibraltar. We have English, Irish and Scottish constitution lodges. Sure. And we all meet in the Gibraltar Masonic Institute.
Oh,
so
really?
We all meet in one Masonic building. So rather than foreign constitutions, we refer to each other as sister constitutions, because we were all local and we meet in the same building, and they, each of the district secretaries have their offices in the same plot next to each other, which is, it's all very harmonious.
Nice.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Next word?
Give it to him, Stephen.
Right. Wands. Quite relevant, really, for you.
Yes, I guess so.
Big Harry Potter fan, James.
I love Harry Potter. Yes. So what is a wand? A wand is a tool which is carried by certain officers in a lodge or a provincial lodge or a grand lodge. And typically in a private lodge, there will be 2 deacons, sort of the middle of the progression ladder, junior deacon and senior deacon. They're responsible for taking candidates around the lodge during the ceremonies.
Much of the floor work.
Absolutely. And they will have what is called a wand, which they hold in their right hand, and it is essentially a long, thin piece of metal or plastic or wood, which is probably about 6 feet tall, slightly taller than the average person. And on the top of it, it will have a jewel of the office of the person that holds it. So for a deacon, it would have a dove. Also, directors of ceremonies and assistant directors of ceremonies in lodges often have one as well. So it'll have their jewel on the top of it.
Signify
whose
is
role,
whose,
and it kind of signifies the fact that they are predominantly involved in the floor work, the movement around the floor during the ceremonies. And at provincial and grand lodge level, you'll have provincial directors of ceremonies. I'm a provincial deputy director of ceremonies in my province, so I have one that I take out with me whenever I go out to do an installation or a long service certificate. And there's always a joke at home because I'll be packing my stuff ready to go to a meeting. I'll turn to my partner and say, "Oh, have you seen my wand?" And I'll inevitably get some sort of Harry Potter joke. You're a wizard, Harry. But
never do that again.
It's yes, thank you. But it's essentially just part of the regalia of the person if their office requires it.
To me, it's almost a symbol of action. Like it's
that's a good way of putting it.
People who aren't moving around on the floor don't have a wand.
Although I have to say, when I was doing my deaconing in my lodge, I'm a bit sort of cat-handed. I really struggled.
There's a special way to hold it as well.
There is
to be technically correct.
Yes, and you feel it. But if you're sort of I'm not very
practice.
good with that's coordination.
Yeah,
so
I'm frequently blamed for being cack-handed.
Yeah, so I really sort of struggled with that, and it took me a long time. I don't think I ever really got used to it, to be honest.
Well, I did purely because I ended up in something like 10 months. I did 24 or 5 or 6, something like that, at ceremonies as a deacon, because it came just after COVID and it was in 2 lodges at once. So I ended up, and it was a university lodge, so we went travelling around different lodges as well, and so for our candidates. So I sort of got used to it, but it does take a lot of practice to get comfortable with it. He has to be, doesn't he?
Yeah, he literally has.
He has to. That's his job.
I think that I'm quite good at it. Yes.
Yeah.
Did it take you a long time to?
It does. The thing that actually I had to work on for quite a while, which is a very weird thing, is when you sort of stop to do something and you park your wand, which basically means you let it touch the floor to rest it on the floor.
Yeah.
It's making sure it's sort of perpendicular, it's straight, and it's not sort of leaning to one side or leaning backwards and forwards. But of course, what you don't want to be doing is then moving your head to look and check if it's straight.
That would be the problem I would have.
Yeah. And so you've almost got to. It's like a subconscious feeling.
Yeah.
You have to know that it's right.
It's got to be intuitive.
Yeah, and as you said about being a deacon, it's the same when you're a deacon. It takes time to get it right.
Well, throwing really a bonus one in there, because I think this is all very related, is jewels.
Yeah.
You briefly mentioned it, right? It goes on top of the wand, for example, but also, where else do they appear, Shaun?
Well, I wear two jewels as part of my regalia. I wear, and you just sort of slot them into your breast pocket on your jacket.
Just to clarify, because there's essentially 2 types of jewels here. So we could be getting confused.
Sorry, you're right.
So what I was actually referring to are collared jewels.
Right, sorry.
But there are, of course, breast jewels. So I should have clarified there.
That's absolutely
so we might as well talk about both.
I will talk about let me finish with with my breast jewels, I'll wear my Royal Arch jewel, which signifies that I'm a member of the Royal Arch, and I'll also wear, and that goes closer to my heart. You always wear that on the furthest, if you think of inside, where you're looking down,
on the inside.
And then next to that I have my tercentenary jewel, and I was, anyone can now wear those, by the way. It was originally that you had to have been a Freemason at the time of the tercentenary. That's now no longer the case. Anybody can wear them, but those are the 2.
And that's to commemorate 300 years.
Yes, in 2017, when we celebrated the tercentenary, 300 years since the founding of the Premier Grand Lodge, and they released a jewel that you could wear for that. So
which is very nice looking jewel as well.
It is. But further to your other point, collar jewels, each office within the lodge will have its own jewel.
Indeed, but before we move on from the breast jewels, if you're not a Mason, you might not know what that is, and basically they look like medals, essentially.
Yes, they do.
That you would see in other walks of life.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
But yes, as you say, then collar jewels are worn at the bottom, appendage to a collar.
Yep.
And the collars are a different thing, really, but essentially you'll have a lodge collar or a district collar or a grand lodge collar, which we've just explained what the different levels are. Nothing too majorly different, but some slight differences, but not the focus, really. The jewel is the important thing. That's your office. That's what you do in that lodge. And I find it quite interesting because you can hold multiple offices in multiple different lodges, of course, and at different levels, provincial and grand rank, etc. But I always like the idea that you wear the office that you are acting, the office that you are doing. You know, as worshipful master of my mother lodge, I'll wear just the worshipful master's jewel, not the district communications one, because that's not what I'm there for. Whereas, of course, at the district meeting, I will wear a district communications officer's jewel.
Yes, I think you will see people, especially provincial, district, and grand officers. What can sometimes happen is you end up wearing 2 or 3 collars. You have your provincial collar on with your provincial jewel. Then maybe you're the treasurer of your lodge. You have that collar on, and then maybe you're also the mentor. And you have that collar on, and as soon as the brother starts walking across the carpet, jing, 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 jing. You don't need to wear all 3 collars.
Well, my understanding anyway is that the apron signifies your rank. The jewel signifies your office.
Correct, yeah.
And the subtle difference there is your rank is the highest rank that you've been given in Freemasonry, but your office is the role you are currently acting as.
Yes, correct.
So if you have your apron as a grand whatever, you don't need also a grand collar if you're not acting at Grand Lodge or you're not in Grand Lodge.
If you're not holding any office in your lodge, you're just a member, then of course you would wear your Grand Lodge collar. But if you're a Grand Officer or a Provincial Officer and you're also, let's say, the junior deacon of your lodge, you don't actually need to wear your Provincial Grand Rank collar and your lodge collar. You can wear your Provincial apron and just
exactly, because you will always wear the apron of your highest office.
Absolutely. Stephen.
Yes, one for me.
Warrant.
Yes, well, that's sort of a dubious one because we have many types of warrants. But warrant from Grand Lodge for a lodge, for example, a lodge warrant is issued when you are consecrating a lodge at the very beginning of time for that lodge. Grand Lodge issues a warrant to essentially permit you to meet under its remit, under, we very nicely, it wasn't really planned that way, or maybe it was, who knows, that we've just discussed, obviously, Provincial and Grand Lodge and the sort of the administrative structure of that. This warrant essentially is permission, and not just permission, but support from the Grand Lodge. They are very happy to have you as part of their Grand Lodge.
Yes.
And without a warrant, you cannot meet as a regular lodge. And so that's, of course, the basis of a warrant.
Yes.
And it is actually presented to the master every year to ensure that it remains in the constant care of the master of the lodge, whose responsibility it is to look after it for that year, which I think is a lovely tradition.
And should be displayed at every lodge meeting.
At all lodge meetings, yes.
Most lodges will put it in front of the secretary's table. Some have it on the wall.
We have it in front of the piano.
Yep, some have it in front of the piano. But essentially it needs to be in the room.
Yes.
It needs to be visible.
On display.
Visible,
yes.
And so it's a good idea for the director of ceremonies of the lodge to know where that is at all times.
Yes.
Because you shouldn't really be opening your lodge if you can't find it. Very important document. And the thing I like about a warrant, especially when you look at these lodges that are celebrating 100 or 200 years, the warrants have the name of the primus, so the first worshipful master.
Yes, which I think is lovely.
And the
first
two wardens of the lodge when it was consecrated on. And that will forever be on that document for as long as that lodge continues to exist.
And even in some cases where lodges cease to exist, that warrant is handed back to Grand Lodge. I'm sure it's not destroyed.
It goes in the archives, does it not?
Yes, exactly. Yes. So it will forever be on that document and will forever be a piece of history, which I think is a wonderful thing. And I said it's different types of warrants, right? Because you also have centenary, anniversary, essentially, warrants, centenary, bicentenary, tercentenary warrants. And those, I think, took me a while to understand exactly what that meant, but my understanding at least is that it's a confirmation that you have met regularly, consistently, so you can't have gaps in your sort of in your minute book. That's one of the reasons that we have minute books, right? To show that we've met for that time period regularly, as followed the rules, as it were, as regularly constituted, at least in this country, United Grand Lodge of England private lodge, and those warrants are essentially almost like a certificate to say well done to an extent, and a lot of lodges will have that on display with pride.
They also serve a secondary purpose as well, because they actually permit the lodge to have a, say, centenary jewel, and it explains actually quite a lot of detail on that warrant, what that jewel can look like, how wide the ribbon can be, where it can be worn. It's a breast jewel, as we just discussed, not one you put on your collar.
And if you don't have that warrant, you cannot wear the jewel. As you know, if the lodge doesn't have that warrant, you cannot wear the jewel for that lodge. And actually, we're saying all this of what it's for and what it does, but if you haven't seen one, they're rather beautiful documents. They're in sort of a very old-fashioned, beautiful font, and they contain some very nicely worded information, basically explaining probably much more succinctly than we are what it permits within the lodge. So I hope anything you want to add about a warrant?
No, I don't think so. I think you both covered it.
Beautifully done.
Beautifully.
There you go.
So that's just a few
Masonic
explainer words, but we are actually out of time, brethren, believe it or not.
It's a shame.
But
flew by.
It did fly by. But of course, we will continue to do these as time goes on.
Yes, absolutely.
We'll be back.
We will be back
next series
Arnie.
with another one of these. But in the meantime, you have a lot to look forward to. So with that, thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening, everybody.
Thank you to our listeners. And don't forget, you can email podcast@ugle.org.uk. On X, we are UGLE_Grand Lodge, and United Grand Lodge of England on Instagram and Facebook. Please do get in touch with us, and we'll see you next time.
Goodbye for now.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Craftcast, the Freemasons podcast. The podcast is hosted by Shaun Butler, Stephen Watley, and James Dalton. The producer is Marta Zandri, and the podcast is edited by Trisonic.